In this video, we're talking about the 3 movement issues that can hinder sports performance, what they are, how they're caused, and how to start addressing them. I'm Aaron Robinette, founder and head coach of Athletic Power and Performance, where I help athletes reach their peak potential by coaching them how to maximize their talents, skills, and abilities. The first issue is spinal disc herniation. And when this happens, it can cause pain, which causes apprehension in the spine. And when that happens, what ends up happening is there's a lack of mobility because the muscles around that disc, herniated disc, will start to tighten up and create immobility. And then that causes movement issues because when the spine is not mobile enough, and for instance, every athlete has to twist, even the runner has to twist to run. But when we get someone that's swinging like a tennis racket, a baseball bat, or even doing some track stuff like the hammer throw, discus, and that sort of thing, what ends up happening is there's overcompensation through the extremities. So if you have the disc that's herniated, the muscles around it cause the immobility. The shoulder has to be more mobile, the arm has to be more mobile, the wrist has to be more mobile. And down the spine as well, and down into the extremities and lower legs. The hips, the knees, and the ankles have to be more mobile. And that can lead to a lot of overuse injuries in all those extremities. So when you have an overuse injury, you start having pain, for instance, in your wrist or your ankle or your knee or your shoulder, and you're not sure why. It could be caused by a disc herniation, that the body has actually created immobilization within the spine and overcompensation within that extremity. The second way that sports performance can be hindered is through muscle restriction. So I already mentioned in step number 1 how muscle restriction can be caused because of a herniated disc and the muscles get tight around there. But there's a variety of reasons why muscles can get tight. When they do get tight and they do get restricted and lack of mobility happens, again, there's a variety of reasons why that can happen, but there could be apprehension. But this can cause poor posture, it can cause poor sports mechanics or movement mechanics because of that apprehension. And oftentimes when this happens, even when you stretch the muscle will get a little bit looser, but it'll go right back and get tight because we're not dealing with the cause, we're dealing with the effect, which we'll get much more into in step number 3. But muscle restriction is a huge way that sports performance could be hindered. Step number 3 is inflammation within the organs, and this could be one of the biggest issues. It can cause everything else I talked about. So starting with inflammation within the organs, how that affects the spine, even if you do not have a disc herniation, it can actually restrict the spine from rotation, and I went into how that affects movement. So for instance, when you rotate and you have a restriction in the spine, you have to compensate. The body will make compensation issues, which causes overuse issues up into the shoulders, elbows, wrist, and the rest of the arm, or down into the hips, knees, ankles, and feet. So it can cause compensation issues. Even within the spine itself, it can actually cause disc herniation. The other way that inflammation within the organs cause is it actually radiates pain out into different muscles depending on which organ has the issue. And that causes the apprehension I talked about in the muscle section. So that apprehension obviously causes movement issues, but causes a whole host of apprehension and pain within muscles that you seem like, well, I didn't hurt that muscle, but for some reason my shoulder hurts. That could be organ inflammation. How I would address this is start with dealing with the inflammation within the organs first. So how you deal with this is you start eliminating foods that are causing the inflammation. So start with elimination diet, and my suggestion is start with the main causes for most people, which is gluten, soy, and dairy. Remove those foods out as long as possible, ideally 3 months, but most people, that's 3 months is way too long. So start with a couple weeks, start with 2 weeks, eliminate all those foods all at once. So anything that has gluten, soy, or dairy, remove those out of your diet. And then after 2 weeks, or after the period of time you determine, then reintroduce one at a time. So for instance, reintroduce foods that have gluten, no soy, no dairy, but just gluten, and see how your body responds. If you get any bloating, gas, any lethargy, anything that you're really tired or anything like that, any negative symptoms, means that's a food you should not have in your system. Then remove that and take the second one. So for instance, soy, reintroduce that. So that's how you work the elimination diet. So that would be step number 1. Step number 2, what I would work on is balancing the body out. So you need to do this personally yourself. Going outside sources doesn't work as well initially. You may need that, but you want to start connecting your brain to what's happening. And when you're doing it yourself, you want to start stretching your tight areas first. So that would be step number 2, but stretch your tight areas. So for instance, if you check everything, you check your hamstrings, your quads and everything, you find your right hamstring is tight, your left hamstring is not, stretch your tight hamstring, but don't stretch your other one. So only stretch the tight areas. So my suggestions is check your neck, your chest, your upper back, low back, your hips, your quads, your thighs, your calves with a bent knee, your calves with a straight leg, and other things, rotation, so laying on your back with your legs up, rotate your legs to one side then the other. Check all those areas. Those are just a general guideline. Whatever's tight, stretch those. Whatever's not tight, don't stretch those. If you have 2 areas that are tight, one's tighter than the other one, but both are tight, stretch the tight one at least 2 or 3 times more than you stretch the other one, but go ahead and stretch both of them. And then also strengthen weak areas. So that's a way of balancing the body out. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is when you go to outside sources. So that's when you start checking, going to a chiropractor, going to a massage therapist, going to other therapies, acupuncture, physical therapy, different things like that. And what ends up happening is when you do this stepped approach, you start with the things you can control first. When you go to those outside sources, it becomes much more effective. So that's my suggestion on how to deal with these issues of restricted movement and how to improve your sports performance. If you really got some value out of this video, go ahead and give me a big thumbs up. And if you want to get more of my videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel.